Hi, my name's Gary Bankhead and I'm an underwater archaeologist based here in Durham City in the northeast of England. Over the last 10 years I've been using subaqueous diving equipment to recover objects from the riverbed here in the River Wear, just downstream from the 12th century Elvid Bridge, which you can see over my shoulder. To date I've discovered over 13,500 small finds, and they date from the 12th century, the time the bridge was built, right the way through to the modern period. But if you recall, on the last video that I did, I found a very small pectoral cross. It was silver, so in England that's classed as treasure. We've dated it to the 14th, 15th century, and its form suggests that it could be a cross of St. Cuthbert, or associated with the shrine of St. Cuthbert. And Cuthbert Shrine is literally 314 yards away as the crow flies in the sumptuous shrine in Durham Cathedral. So on this dive I'm going to go back to that spot. I'm on this medieval layer, really excited. I just know I'm going to find some more objects from that period, which is incredibly important. So why don't you join me and let's go and have a look and see what I find. So before I actually go and start the dive proper, I just want to briefly talk about the bridge itself. So this is Elvid Bridge in Durham City. It's a 12th century bridge built by Bishop Hugh de Pusset, or Bishop Pudsey as he was affectionately known at the time. The bridge itself may have had up to 14 arches, and I think today we probably can account for 10 of them, but only 5 allow the river to pass through. The arches themselves are really narrow, and I think they're actually the narrowest bridge arches in England. You can only just get a rowing boat through. But what you're looking at, if I just point up there, you can see the underside of the bridge is in 2 different halves. Originally you were looking at a relatively narrow structure, so that first half there was sort of the original structure, and you can see some ribbed arches up there. Later in 1805 the bridge was effectively widened. It was doubled in width by the local authorities at that time. So you have sort of a soft side there. So what you're looking at is the remains of the old bridge and the sort of more relatively new bridge on the upstream side. The bridge itself was really badly damaged by a whole series of floods, and at great expense it had to be rebuilt. In order to help pay for some of the costs of rebuilding, the bishops of Durham would grant charters that allowed the building of tenements or houses on the bridge, and that sort of accounts for that cluster of houses that you can see at the the eastern side of the bridge. Historically, we know that there's been several shops, wooden structures, sort of temporary structures built on the bridge, and given that this was, for perhaps 600 years of its sort of history, a really narrow structure, you can just imagine it was quite a busy little bridge, footbridge to cross the river, and that would give you access onto the peninsula to the markets. So you can just imagine tens of thousands of citizens, artisans, merchants, and even pilgrims coming from the south, from London, up London Road, would across the bridge at this point. So that's what makes it significant. And the objects I've been finding here are typically dress accessories. I think about 2/3 of all of the objects that I found, the buttons and buckles and brooches, pins, objects that would have been associated with dress and fashion. And there's a wonderful 18th century account of how a man came down early in the morning to open up his little stall, his little booth or bothy that he would have been selling his wares. And his wooden structure was so large he was able to climb over the bridge superstructure to get his stock out, and as he was doing so, the bottom actually fell out. So he went crashing into the river along with all of his stock. And that's really relevant because when we analyse these small finds in the lab, we can see that the very, very little wear. It's as if they were brand new when they were lost. So the objects themselves, they've come in, they've hit the water. The river here is solid sandstone, and I can see why they would have built the bridge here. Really, really good location to do that. And it's the cracks and gullies in the sandstone where the objects are being found. So that's a very short history lesson of the bridge. 12th century bridge. There it is. So it's early in the morning. I'm going to go and do my dive now, see how many artifacts I can find. Guessing about 50 to 150. Yeah, that many. Okay, so I'll quickly show you what it's like under the bridge because nobody gets to see this. There you go, history lesson over. I'm going to go and find some artifacts. Catch you soon. So anxious to recover yet more late and post-medieval artifacts, I swim directly to the trench. And as soon as I get my buoyancy set, I begin to excavate. In case you're wondering what that piece of white fabric is attached to the shoulder of my dry suit, it's an extension loop, and I use it to help close my dry suit zip. Diving by myself means I don't have a buddy to do this for me. However, the solution is relatively simple. All I need to do is loop it around a convenient hook or a post and turn my body in the opposite direction to close the zip. Now, the dive early in the week had yielded some absolutely stunning artifacts, and I'm confident I will find similar objects during this dive, as I'm on what I call a medieval lair. But I need to remain focused, get my eye in and concentrate. The conditions for diving are close to perfect, and I really need to take advantage of this prolonged spell of fine, settled weather. The visibility underwater remains excellent, and the water temperature is finally creeping up to double figures. Again, I'm wearing my full dive kit, dry suit, hood and gloves. As well as keep my hands warm, these gloves should protect them from the many sharp objects that I come into contact with as I excavate down through the trench. My 15-litre cylinder, charged to 200 bar, will give me about 90 minutes dive time. Now, a weird thing about my time underwater is that it really is a lonely place to be. The rest of the world may be getting on with its stuff, but here I am 3 meters down, totally immersed in my efforts to find the objects, unable to communicate with anyone. But whenever I move away from the trench, even for a few seconds, these little characters swarm all over it, looking for tiny morsels to eat. I call them my fish friends, and I'm always glad of their company. As the sun's early morning rays light up the riverbed, it's time to get back to the task at hand and find those important, small medieval objects. Now, at this point of the dive, I've spotted 2 objects, one of which is quite important. But, as you saw in my first dive, lead cloth seals are relatively common finds for Elvet. This seal is another 2-part example, and I can see that it features an intricate privy mark or a ligature. It also seems to bear some numbers, and these may help us either date it or identify what length of cloth it was once attached to. The length of a bolt of cloth was usually measured in Dutch ells. However, the second object, which has just begun to emerge from the riverbed, is perhaps more important. Its dark colour, as a contrast to the lighter background pebbles, helps emphasise its form, and I recognise it immediately as a rowel spur, which is a first for Elvid. My excitement is palpable as I lift that incredible object from its circa 600-year resting place. Although the wheel rowel is missing, there appears to be a buckle attached to one of the terminals. The other terminal appears damaged, and may be the reason why the object ended up in the river in the first place. Unless, of course, it was lost during conflict. And even after the end of the Scottish Wars of Independence in 1328, Durham was frequently raided by the Scots. As early as 1140, William Cumin had burned part of Elvid, and the borough was again attacked in 1312 to 1313 by the Scot Robert Bruce. Was this object once the possession of a knight? Rowel spurs can often be dated by comparing them to those depicted on medieval brasses, and an increase in the length of the shank reflects the growing use of horse armour. There's little doubt that this is a very important discovery for Durham, and after conservation in the lab, it should be a relatively easy object to date, and we should be able to learn much about it, for example how it was made and what materials were used. Even though I've made one incredible discovery already during this dive, there's every chance that another equally stunning object lies hidden just a few centimetres away. And as I still have air in my cylinder, I can continue searching for a little while yet. Small finds continue to reveal themselves as I waft away the small stones. But I'm close to the bottom of the trench, and I need to move forward, and that means starting again at the top, removing the next layer of larger stones and other detritus before I get lower down. After a short while, I'm back down to the occupation layer, the same layer where I've been finding many late medieval objects, and I'm eagerly anticipating my next find. And there it is, a wonderfully preserved object that is in such great condition that it literally takes my breath away. This is another first for Elvid, a so-called lyre-shaped buckle. The buckle, which appears to be copper alloy, is decorated with trefoils, and it looks like it features an initial letter on the integral box plate, and that's surrounded by incise crosshatch decorations. Unfortunately, the pin is missing, which suggests it could have been iron and may have corroded away. And this buckle could easily date to the 14th or 15th centuries. And that's the same period as a rowel spur, which adds to my theory that there is some context to these finds in the riverbed. As if not to be outdone by the previous two stunning finds, my final discovery of the dive is yet another lead spindle wall. It almost presents itself to me, as if calling out, "Here I am, pick me up too." Although undecorated, it's another fabulous find. And on any other day, if this was the only find I had made on the dive, then it would still have been a good dive. Today, however, the whirl is just another small find, an amazing collection of late and post-medieval objects. As this dive ends, it turns out that the second dive that I did in May 2019 was just as incredible as the first. Wow, what a fantastic dive. Got another load of artifacts. I really can't wait to get home, find out what these ones are. I'm so excited by these.